I've had the pleasure of getting behind the wheel of many a BMW 3 Series. I've reviewed them separately, however I'd like to go through some key differences between the two that you might not have seen before. Let's get into it. My name's Tom, and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Before we start, please like, subscribe and hit the bell if you'd like us to keep bringing you this content. Also, don't forget to follow our socials for updates on our stock. Links in the description below. Now, just a prerequisite, the footage I have is of a F30 335D and a new G20 320D, but just imagine the 335 is a 320, as I'll be referring to it as such. Don't worry, I'm not comparing a monstrous diesel to a 2-litre daily runaround. Right, exterior. The design I think they nailed with the new one. It's angular, aggressive, yet not too harsh on the eye. It strikes the perfect balance, I think. The newer car also has a lower drag coefficient. Basically, it's more slippery. This not only improves fuel economy, but reduces wind noise on the motorway. And from driving the two back to back, you can definitely tell the difference, albeit very slight. The engines in these 320D models, as far as I can tell, are the same. The model codes are B47D20 for the F30 and B47D20B for the G20. Power is the same, torque is the same, and the way it delivers both is also the same. The one key difference with the newer 320D though is that it can now be had as a mild hybrid. So as well as the 4-cylinder diesel, you get an 11 horsepower electric motor mounted in between the engine and the gearbox that aids starting the engine and giving you a little boost low down in the rev range. Usually I'm against going for the hybrid option, but this isn't like a plug-in hybrid system where it turns the engine off at every single opportunity. It's more there to just smooth out the driving experience, and I have to say it works. It works well. The biggest change for me is just the way it starts the engine though. Unlike a regular start-stop system where you have this 1 to 2 second delay before you start moving, the system in this newer 3 Series just gets the car going immediately, almost like the engine was already on. A bit of a weird sensation, but you get used to it, and it's a very, very good system. And once this car goes past, I'll be able to demonstrate how that works. So you'll notice it starts the engine immediately. And for me, that makes a huge difference in how you pull away from junctions. Even the ZF 8-speed gearbox is the same. However, the way it's calibrated is definitely a bit better in the G20. You don't get that weird hesitation when slowing down and suddenly going again. It just feels a bit more intuitive in the newer car. So overall, the driving experience powertrain-wise is just smoother in the G20. The suspension though is an interesting one. The new car is lower and wider, also noticeably stiffer, especially in M Sport's trim. I have to say, I think you should probably leave the suspension in its regular setting because the sporty setting is very sporty. I mean, it's like track use only. An M Sport F30 320D feels a bit sporty, but by no means uncomfortable. The M Sport G20 though, it's very close to being too stiff for UK roads. In comfort, the adaptive dampers are what I'd call on the firmer side. Whack the car into sports mode though, and it's similar to a Mark III Ford Focus RS in the stiff setting. In my opinion, that's far too stiff for UK roads. You end up skipping over every bump and it just hurts after a while. In terms of driving dynamics though, the newer 3 Series just feels like an incremental improvement over the F30. Unsurprising, but the fact you can feel the difference is actually pretty nice. Just leave it in comfort. Now comes the biggest difference for me, and that is the interior build quality / design. It is vastly superior in the G20. The trim panel gaps are smaller, which is nice, but the design looks so much fresher. There's angles, screens, knurled switches, and even a better click to those switches. It feels in line, if not better, than Audi's interiors these days. And that's impressive, as they've already beaten them in terms of driving dynamics. Another one of my favourite changes they made on the newer car was moving from a release mechanism to a pump mechanism when it comes to manually adjusting the seats. I can't lie, this alone would make me buy the new car. If you don't know, the F30 3 Series would completely release the seat when you pulled the lever, making it very hard to find the exact position you want. A pump mechanism allows you to just have that extra bit of precision, and therefore allows you to get a little bit more comfortable. Even the rear seats feel more spacious in the G20. In fact, during my original review of that car, you could see just how surprised I was at the amount of room in it. The boot is the same 480 litres, however, again, the newer car seems to have a couple more cubby spaces and some nettage. Also, the previous F30 could be had without folding rear seats, which has surprised a couple of customers as they've bought the car and then gone to put a TV in the boot and then realised they can't fold the seats down. Not ideal. So if you're thinking of buying one, just double check that it's got the folding seat option ticked. Now, on the road, fast road driving has always been the BMW 3 Series' forte, and the G20 just gets it right. Again, as long as you leave it in comfort. Namely, the brakes is the highlight for me. They have the overall same effectiveness, but the feel is much better. Every F30 I've driven has had very slightly spongy brakes to them, which meant you'd have to get deeper into the pedal than you think you would. Not that confidence inspiring. The G20 has a much more progressive feel, but most importantly, a much nicer initial bite point. If you buy an F30, think of getting some yellow stuff brake pads fitted, as they give a much better initial bite and therefore give you more confidence than the standard brake pads. The steering, this is where there's both positives and negatives to the newer car. The steering rack is faster, e.g. less turns lock to lock. You can even see here that I'm not having to do quite as much wheel twirling in the newer car. In turn, it makes the G20 feel more responsive, sharper and quicker to react during oversteer. Now, the negative. The G20 has a thicker wheel, which to most might not seem like a huge issue, but it makes controlling the car a little harder when you're really ragging it. It's also, for me, just a little less comfortable to hold. Not sure why BMW insist on a thick wheel, but it really doesn't make sense to me. Overall, the new 3 Series is still the better car though, from a driver's and passenger's perspective. It is so close to the perfect daily driver that I actually still find it hard to recommend anything else. Oh, did I mention that this 320d also did 70 miles per gallon during our MPG test? Yeah, mental. So if you've got the dosh and are thinking of buying a BMW 3 Series, I'd highly recommend putting in the extra cash for a G20, as you can see and feel exactly where your money is going. And I mean, just look at this thing. Isn't it stunning? As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and why not subscribe? As not only can you see more videos like this, you can see everything we have for sale. My name's Tom and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.